A striped gray cat named Mittens had a strange habit. Every evening, he would return home with something in his mouth. At first, his owner, a kind old man named George, thought it was just a regular mouse or bug. But one day when Mittens came back, George saw something unexpected, a wet, crumpled $100 bill. George was puzzled. Where did his cat get this money? He thought it might be a coincidence and didn't think much of it. But over the next few weeks, Mittens continued to bring home more wet bills. Some were just $1 or $5, but many were $100 bills. George began to worry. He was afraid his cat might be stealing money from someone, which could get him into trouble. Growing suspicious, George decided to attach a small camera to Mittens' collar to see where he went and what he did. The next evening, he waited anxiously. Mittens went outside, and George began to watch the video on his phone. To be continued. The video showed Mittens walking briskly along a dirt path near his house. He walked far away from the town until he stopped in a field next to a wide, open road. There, George saw a sight that shocked him. There was a man walking in the middle of the road, and just behind him a small money bag fell. Mittens walked up to it and picked up the bag, but he reached his head into the bag and took out a bill. He didn't take the bag with him. Instead, he returned with a handful of bills in his mouth. George started to understand. Mittens wasn't a thief. He was picking up money that had fallen on the road. He watched the video more and saw that many bills had fallen there, and it seemed like other people were picking them up as well. George wondered why so much money was falling in that one place. He decided to go to the location himself the next day to investigate. When he arrived at the spot where Mittens went, he saw many tire tracks that made him suspicious. George followed the tracks and found an unexpected place. This was where the whole story began. George followed the tire tracks, which led him deeper into the countryside, away from the main road. The tracks ended at a small, unassuming landing strip, a place he'd never known existed. As he got closer, he saw a small airplane, its propeller still, with a group of people loading large metal boxes onto it. He hid behind some thick bushes and watched, his heart pounding. He saw two men in suits arguing with a third man, who was wearing a pilot's uniform. Suddenly, one of the men in suits opened a metal box. Inside were bundles of cash. One of the bundles fell, and as it hit the ground, the paper wrapping broke, and dozens of $100 bills scattered across the dirt and grass. The men didn't even seem to care. They were so focused on their argument that they just kicked the stray bills aside as they continued to load the boxes. George finally understood. This was a private airstrip used for something illegal, and they were handling so much money that dropping a few $1,000 here and there didn't matter to them. Mittens hadn't been stealing. He had been a tiny, furry janitor cleaning up after a group of careless criminals. As he watched, George saw the pilot shake his head and walk away. He pulled out a phone and made a call, his voice low and angry. The pilot then walked to his car, which was parked just a few feet from where George was hiding, and drove off. George knew he had to do something. He pulled out his own phone and called the local police, giving them the exact location and a description of the men and the plane. He then quietly backed away, making sure not to be seen. He didn't want to become a witness or worse, a victim. When he got home, Mittens was waiting for him at the door, a wet, crumpled $20 bill in his mouth. George smiled, patted his cat's head, and took the money. "You've been a good boy, Mittens," he said. "A very good boy indeed." Later that evening, George heard the sound of sirens in the distance. He looked out his window and saw police cars speeding down the road toward the airstrip. He knew he'd done the right thing. He looked at Mittens, who was now curled up on the couch, purring contentedly. The cat's strange habit had not only solved a mystery, but had also helped catch some criminals. But the story wasn't over. The next day, George got a call from the police department. They wanted to speak with him, not just about the criminals, but about the money Mittens had brought home. To be continued. What do you think the police want to talk to George about? What an exciting story. Here's the next part. The Cat That Liked to Bring Home Money. Part 4. George arrived at the police station with Mittens in his cat carrier. The officer, a kind-looking woman named Detective Miller, greeted them with a smile. "Mr. Harrison, thank you for coming in," she said, gesturing toward a chair. "And this must be the little hero." George placed the carrier on the floor and sat down. Mittens is just a good boy who likes to pick things up. But you said you wanted to talk about the money. Detective Miller leaned forward. Yes, we've recovered most of the money. But what's interesting is the currency. It's marked with special dye packs and tracking devices. This isn't just a simple drug deal. It's a very large-scale counterfeiting operation. And the criminals were so focused on escaping that they didn't even notice they were leaving a trail of evidence. George was stunned. He knew something was wrong, but he never imagined it was this big. So the money Mittens brought home, is it all fake? That's the thing. We think so. The bills are incredibly well made. We wouldn't have known for sure without our forensics team. The criminals' plan was to get the money out of the country before anyone could track it. That's why they were using a private airfield. You and your cat helped us stop them just in time. Detective Miller then explained that the criminals had a large hidden network, and the bills Mittens had brought home were crucial for their investigation. They could trace where the bills had been created and what other counterfeit networks they were connected to. The little cat's habit had just blown open an international crime ring. So what happens now? George asked, his mind still reeling. Well, the detective said, the money Mittens found is considered evidence. We can't let you keep it, of course, but we do want to reward you and Mittens for your service. The department has decided to set up a small fund for you to make sure. Mittens has all the treats and toys he could ever want. George smiled. He hadn't wanted the money anyway. He just wanted to make sure his little cat wasn't in danger. As he carried Mittens out of the station, the cat looked up at him with bright green eyes, as if to say, "What's our next adventure?" But George knew their adventuring days were over. He had his hero cat, a new friend in the police department, and the satisfaction of knowing they had helped make their town a little safer.